Ch.52, truth or deception, difficult to discern too. Si Lian's gaze moved back to Qi Rong. After staring at him for a moment, Si Lian said, Qi Rong, it looks like you've been living colorfully these past few years. Right after he finished his words, Hua Cheng removed his fake skin. Qi Rong's eyes widened as each three of the intruders revealed themselves. Lang Qianchu was bewildered. Cousin. Even if earlier, when he heard Qi Rong say, us Xianlei, and guessed the identity of the green ghost's past life was a citizen of the kingdom of Xianlei, he hadn't imagined that he and Si Lian were actually related. On a personal level, Qi Rong stared at Si Lian's face, and looked him up and down. It was a gaze hungry with curiosity and fascination. When his eyes stopped at the sword Fangxin on Si Lian's back, he suddenly burst out laughing. So that's it. That's it. Fangxin was you. You were Fangxin. H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A. Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Although he couldn't understand why he was laughing, Lang Qianchu's guts told him it wasn't anything appropriate, and demanded angrily, what's so funny? I'm laughing at my good old cousin, what's it to you? Exclamation mark. Qi Rong bit back in a fit. Just now I said my lords. Stupidity spanned hundreds of years. I'm sorry. I apologize. The best way to learn is to learn from the best. Look at your master, no wonder you're so fucking stupid. He turned to Si Lian. You went to Yong'an and became the Guoshi, and ended up stabbed to death by your own disciple. Is that not exciting? Is it not hilarious? You deserved it, making a fool of yourself. The moment he uttered the word fool, Hua Cheng smashed his head down again violently. Qi Rong had always been tough-skinned, and for some reason, seeing Si Lian made him 10 times more excited than usual. Even with his face bashed into the ground, he yelled unceasingly, a fool! A fool! A fool! Each time he said it, Hua Cheng would smash his head down again. It was a bloody scene, and Si Lian stopped the hand that was about to strike again. San Lang, let it go. Why should I? Exclamation mark. Hua Cheng said sharply. It's nothing, don't let any of it get to you, Si Lian said. He is mental, and extremely troublesome. I can take care of him. You just sit back and ignore him. He gently rubbed Hua Cheng's shoulder, and it was a long time before Hua Cheng finally replied in a low voice, fine. Qi Rong plucked his own head from the ground and rolled to the side with difficulty. He spat, why play? Pretend with your false kindness. If you really didn't want him to hit me, then you should have stopped him from the beginning. Faking indifference and only telling him to let it go now, no one's gonna praise you for your generosity. I stopped him because I don't want him to dirty his hands. Did you misunderstand something? Si Lian said. A trace of anger flashed through Qi Rong's bloodied face, but then he started giggling. You, cousin Crown Prince, you're getting along pretty well with Hua Cheng. And here I was just wondering why none of the underlings this little brother of yours sent to greet you on Zhongyuan ever returned, so it was because they ran into Hua Cheng. Si Lian had no idea that Qi Rong had actually sent any underlings to go find him. That night of the Jungyuan Festival, it was a coincidence to have bumped into Hua Cheng, and taking him back to Puchi. Shrine wasn't in the plans. It seemed that all of Qi Rong's underlings had been taken care of by Hua Cheng. Si Lian couldn't help but steal a glance at the person next to him. Qi Rong continued, calling him San Lang, TSK TSK TSK, so familiar. Cousin, you're a big shot, heavenly. Official, how can you hang out with ghosts and demons? Aren't you worried about your reputation? You're so perfect after all, so pure and flawless, your halo shines upon all on this earth, haha. Many in the heavenly court had more or less thought the way Mu King spoke was sarcastic, but if they were to listen and compare, they would learn what sarcasm truly is. Truly, they had wronged Mu King. Qi Rong didn't just speak, he'd act too. He folded his hands over his heart and exclaimed, Cousin Crown Prince, this little brother had constantly thought of you over the years. Look, I even meticulously carved this statue to keep you by my side, so I can gaze upon your heroic form every waking moment of every day. What do you think? It's pretty well done, right? Do you like it? Don't worry, if you don't like it then. Even better, I'll carve more, haha. The moment he mentioned the statue, Hua Cheng's face immediately darkened. If it wasn't for Si Lian holding him back, he would have stepped on Qi Rong's face. However, Si Lian knew perfectly well the kind of person Qi Rong was. He was a little mad in the head, and the more extreme the reaction, the more excited he'd get, and the more outrageous he'd become. Reverse psychology was the most effective, so Si Lian only smiled faintly. It's only all right. Sorry, but the craftsmanship is kind of low class. As expected, Qi Rong's face immediately fell. He said coldly, enough. If it wasn't for my past affections and me carving you a couple statues, who would even worship you? You probably sniveled and whined at Jun Wu's feet and hugged till your knees busted in order to ascend this time. Go around the heavens and see for yourself, which official isn't more dignified than you. Even a 200-year-old ascendee can walk all over you. You're pretty much 800 years old but only got so far. What a failure. Si Lian smiled. I am quite the failure, not like cousin, already a savage after 800 years. Si Lian knew way too well how to put Qi Rong down. Next to him, Hua Cheng snorted, and Qi Rong's face darkened. He looked between all those present, and suddenly said, This stance, did you beg Hua Cheng to fuck with me today to settle our differences? Si Lian was taken aback, and thought about the current picture they painted, and actually couldn't argue back. Qi Rong continued, look at you all. The moment I say anything bad about you, wow. Look how mad he gets. Was he blinded by that holy light from your halo? My fucking god, I forgot. Wasn't he already blind? In one eye. Ha ha. Before he could finish, his eyes went dark again, and his cheek exploded in agony, spewing blood from his mouth. He got punched again. However, this punch wasn't from Hua Cheng but from Si Lian. Si Lian's fist was faster than the eye could see, and he said coldly, just because I've never hit you before in the past, doesn't mean I would never hit you. That punch was a solid one, and it was a long while before Qi Rong could make any sounds. He laid on the ground like a mangy dog, clubbing the ground with his fists as he cackled. Cousin Crown Prince, you hit me. You actually hit me. Heavens are noble, kind, compassionate. Charitable Crown Prince, who's scared of stepping on even a small ant, actually got pissed and swung a fist. He's hitting people. Incredible. Amazing. Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. He was unbelievably excited, going insane with elation. Lang Qianchu had never seen anyone whose words and actions were so mad, and was shocked into stupefaction after witnessing this singular act. He mumbled, Is he crazy? Si Lian was used to seeing Qi Rong's madness, and didn't think much of it. You've heard it. He's insane. His heart and mind are unbalanced, so nothing he said is believable. Qi Rong's laughter came to a sudden stop. He schooled his face and sneered. Don't be so quick to tell people I'm psycho. Let me ask you, how did Prince Enla die? This was the question Hua Cheng had posed to him, and now he asked it to Si Lian instead. Lang Qianchu's attention was suddenly focused on it again. Si Lian's heart cooled, and couldn't immediately respond. Qi Rong, on the other hand, slowly pulled himself up, and sat while leaning on the kneeling statue. After Enla died, I cut open his corpse to inspect it, and all of his organs were pulverized by the vibrations of an exceedingly powerful sword, which was why he didn't have any external injuries, but couldn't stop hacking up blood. This was something no regular swordsman could do. At first I thought Yong'an thugs had brought in some strange hitman so as to frame Enla's death as illness. But now that I think about it, there's another person who can do this, and it's none other than my good old cousin. Defender of justice. After all, our flower-crowned martial god, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, is a holy, pure, one and only, snow-white lotus of the heavenly mountains. Hua Cheng stomped on him, and Qi Rong yelped miserably. Lang Qianchu felt like his head was going to explode. He held his head, his eyes laced with red. Shut up. Just tell me what you know. Who's the real murderer? What happened at the gilded banquet? And what happened to Prince Enla? What the hell happened? Lang Qianchu, why are you still confused? Qi Rong said. Even I pretty much figured out what happened. Looks like you really don't understand the kind of person your master is. Come. Let me dissect my good old cousin for you. This former crown prince of Xianlei went and became Yong'an's Guoshi, and taught you swordsmanship for 5 years. He'd only spoken a few words, and Si Lian reached for his sword. Before he could charge forward, Lang Qianchu's longsword blocked him. Let him finish. You know he's insane, and yet you still listen to his mad conjecture. Fangxin was swung, and even though it was a slender blade, its shockwave almost made Lang Qianchu loosen his grip on his longsword. But just then, a silver, curved blade knocked Fangxin, hooked it up and pulled it aside. Si Lian was startled and cried, San Lang. Qi Rong saw how much Si Lian didn't want him to speak and how desperately he didn't want Lang Qianchu to hear the story, so Qi Rong had to do the opposite, and grabbed this chance. Prince Enla was our good Xianlei boy, very obedient. He heeded my instructions to be false friends with you, but your master bumped into us cleaning out the Yong'an rat nest at the gilded banquet, so Enla escaped. You got to the gilded banquet, saw what happened, and the Guoshi Fangxin became the most wanted man in the kingdom. This was the previous story, not a word a lie. Si Lian tried to charge forward to shut his mouth a few times, but each time Hua Cheng stopped him. Si Lian cried again, San Lang. However, Hua Cheng didn't say a single word and only continued to block Si Lian. The more Si Lian wanted to charge over, the faster Qi Rong's lips moved. This saintly cousin of mine, when he saw with his own eyes the people of Xianlei committing murder, he must have thought, how can this be? That's not right. So, he went to find Prince Anla to educate him a little, but when he sought him out, my God, what did he discover? Anla's major plot. It wasn't only just assassinating some thugs. There's no way cousin could educate him, so he hardened his heart and killed the last blood of our royal house with his own hands. Afterwards, you caught your master, and nailed him dead in that coffin, and so ends my cousin's magnificent life as Guoshi. Cousin, am I wrong? He spat a mouthful of blood next to the feet of the statue. I know you too well. You love doing shit like this. Ancestors above, look at what a good descendant you gave birth to. Not only has the Xianlei Si clan lost everything, even the bloodline is cut. Xie Lian. You ominous star, you god of misfortune. Your existence is Ciel's greatest tragedy. Why won't you die? How do you even have the face to keep living? But I saw with my own eyes he killed my father with his sword. Lang Qianchu said. How do you explain that? If it's not water getting into your fucking senior eyes and ruining your sight, then I can only think of one reason, Qi Rong replied. Which is that Anla for sure stabbed your old man, but he didn't die. Did he drive the blow home? Qi Rong howled, what are you saying? Exclamation mark. My good cousin is such a kind soul, how could he drive any attacks home? When he arrived, he wouldn't have attacked right away, he'd have to do a little show of trying to save the poor guy first. But, hey, your old man probably killed himself. What do you mean he killed himself? Lang Qianchu demanded. What's the first thing someone saved from the brink of murder will do? Qi Rong asked. After seeing so many massacred at the gilded banquet, what's your first reaction? Lang Qianchu still hadn't completely deduced it. Find the murderer. Wrong. Qi Rong cried. After my good cousin saved your old man and he revived his breath, he would have certainly said quick. Guoshi. It was Prince Anla who'd done it. Go and kill Prince Anla. No, not just that, he must have said something worse, like Guoshi. Bring forth Qianchu. Call upon everyone. I want the entire population of Xianlei wiped out. I want to bury them all with the dead. Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Single quote. His imitative tone of despair and fury was disturbing to listen to, and Lang Qianchu was growing paler by the minute. Qi Rong continued, even if he wasn't killed on the spot, your old hag had an entire nest of thug relatives that were all killed before him. He'd have to open fire on the people of Xianlei sooner or later. Your good master realized this, considered his options, and decided, no, the old man couldn't be saved, so plork. And the old man's heart goes cold. That's the kind of person my good cousin is, a saint who can't have sand in his eyes, always doing shit that harms others and hurts himself. He wanted to please both sides, but succeeded with neither. He, ha ha, h. Next chapter. Ch.53, Truth or Deception, difficult to discern. 3. Si Lian shouted, Qi Rong, you shut your mouth. Lang Qianchu turned his head angrily. Why does he have to shut up? Because what he said is the truth. In that gilded banquet, you and Anla both struck, one killed my entire family, and the other finished the blow to my father. You're all lying to me! Exclamation mark. Si Lian responded hurriedly, don't listen to Qi Rong cut in. Of course it's all a lie. You're so stupid. If not you, then who else do we deceive? If not for some rando spoiling our plans, Xianlei would have already taken your fucking life at the age of 12. Instead of giving you the luxury to grow up and ascend. 12. Lang Qianchu repeated. The biggest thing that happened when he was 12 was that kidnapping, saved by Si Lian. He demanded, that year, the muggers who intruded the palace to kidnap me were sent by the people of Xianlei. Duh. Qi Rong clicked his tongue. Did you think any ordinary assassins can just kidnap the crown prince from hundreds of royal guards? Please. I was the one who helped Anla on that. Lang Qianchu nodded. Helped. Good. I understand. So my friends are all fake. The people of Xianlei never cared for our amity. Your Prince Anla never possessed good intentions, and instead came for our lives. He turned to Si Lian. So, everything you told me was false too? Qi Rong pretended to look surprised. Come, hurry and let me hear what my saintly cousin told you. Lang Qianchu ignored him and continued to address Si Lian. You said Yong'an and Xianlei were but one nation at their roots. Whatever conflicts the royals had with each other had nothing to do with civilians. Both sides used to be one family, and under our generation's rule, there could be changes for the better. As long as the people were happy, it didn't matter what the royal house was named, and both sides could let go of the grudge and unite in time. All that was false. All nonsense, bullshit, lies. This was what Si Lian didn't want to hear the most. He cried immediately, no. It's not false. Think. Under your rule, weren't there real changes? Lang Qianchu closed his mouth, his breath held. Si Lian continued, didn't you do really well? Didn't the remnant citizens of Xianlei integrate peacefully with the people of Yong'an? There were fewer and fewer conflicts and riots, so how could any of it be false? There was a moment of silence, and tears rolled down Lang Qianchu's cheeks. But what about my parents? Yong'an and Xianlei uniting was the greatest wish, that's why they granted the princely title, Anla 39 to the last of your royal bloodline. Their wish came true, but what of their end? Qi Rong clicked his tongue. What a whiny crybaby, just like my saintly cousin once upon a time. You came crying for your old man, old hag. I haven't even fucking harassed your ancestors for my old man and old hag. Fucking uniting Yong'an and Xianlei was their wish. What pretty words. Anla, settle. First, joy. After, you think I can't tell. It means you Yong'an dogs want to walk all over the heads of Xianlei for the rest of our lives. Si Lian yelled angrily, Qi Rong, stop your madness. Lang Qianchu on the other hand, glared at Qi Rong, tears still falling from his eyes. You're the mastermind behind the massacre of my clan. And you're part of the plot behind the gilded banquet too. Qi Rong snickered. Yes, I'm part of it. Anla was part of it too. And your master. Us 3 people of Xianlei all had our part. Ha ha. Suddenly, halfway through his laugh, Lang Qianchu's longsword abruptly swung down and struck. Qi Rong yelped, and his person was sliced into 2. It was an exceedingly gory scene. Both halves of his bodies were rolling around the ground, and his upper body cried, "It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt one bit." Compared to that punch from cousin Crown Prince, you're nothing. Ha. Lang Qianchu didn't say a word, grabbed him by the head and picked it up. Qi Rong was still spouting insults, but Si Lian had noticed something off with Lang Qianchu's expression. He said hurriedly, Qi Rong, stop talking if you value your life. Si Lian always treated others with kind respect, yet Qi Rong was someone that couldn't be faced. Normally, he knew this, so every time he faced him, Si Lian didn't want to be polite at all, and unconsciously became rude himself. Lang Qianchu dragged Qi Rong's upper body and came to the giant bubbling cauldron. Do you usually use this cauldron to cook humans? Having been dragged around, Qi Rong's bloodied carcass drew a thick trail of blood on the ground. Yeah. So. Without another word, Lang Qianchu let go of his hold. Ha ha. It was hard to discern whether Qi Rong was screaming or laughing, and the moment he was dropped into that cauldron, his flesh was instantly burnt and boiled to mush. Si Lian had not expected this development. His pupils shrank and he blurted, Qianqiu. Lang Qianchu responded sharply, what? How many people has the green ghost Qi Rong eaten? We can't teach him what it feels like to be cooked. He's the enemy that murdered my clan. Am I not allowed to make him suffer? Of course he could. So, Si Lian couldn't say anything, and he also had no right to say anything. Yet no matter as the crown prince of a mortal kingdom, or the martial god of the east of heaven, Lang Qianchu had never done a thing such as this. He had always been straightforward in fights, and never used any cruelty. These actions were far from the Lang Qianchu Si Lian knew. After being thrown into the boiling water, after a while, when Qi Rong was fished up, his body no longer retained a human shape. It instead resembled a melted lump of skin and flesh, bones poking out in some areas, terrifying to behold. Yet he seemed quite pleased, and was still guffawing. Congratulations, cousin. Look at your good disciple. His wings have hardened. He's cruel and knows how to torture now. Lang Qianchu released his hold again, and Qi Rong was once again submerged into the bubbling cauldron. This time when he was dropped, it seemed even his bones were dissolved by the boiling liquid. Qi Rong didn't float up again, and only remnants of some green cloth emerged on the surface. After a while, having still not seen his shadow, Si Lian couldn't help but call out, Qi Rong. His younger cousin, who once upon a time couldn't shut up about his cousin the crown prince, had idolized him and praised him for everything he did. However, after the fall of Xianlei, he had turned into a complete madman. He led the burning of his temples, the desecration of his palaces, and commissioned the kneeling crown prince statues everywhere, affixing them as thresholds. To make Si Lian suffer, he could do anything. Si Lian had done his best to put up with that behavior, and if it involved others, he'd do his best to abstract, until finally, when he could no longer tolerate it, he could only keep away and practice out of sight, out of mind. Afterwards, they'd lost touch for many years, and Si Lian thought Qirong had passed away. Who knew that, after so long, he would suddenly meet a figure of the past and see that face that so resembled his? He really couldn't tell whether there were any feelings of nostalgia or remorse. After all, the only ones left from the royal house of Xianlei were the two of them. But they hadn't even seen each other for that long before he died before him, and he was even cruelly killed by a Lang Qianchu who couldn't even use wooden rods to punish. So much happened in such a short period of time, Si Lian hadn't even sorted the thoughts in his head, his heart a mess. Lang Qianchu stood next to the cauldron with his head lowered, unspeaking. Just then, Hua Cheng spoke up. He didn't die. Lang Qianchu raised his head to look at him. Hua Cheng continued, "You don't think this is actually revenge? You only killed one of his many clones. If you want to exterminate him completely, you need to find his ashes." "Thanks for reminding me," Lang Qianchu said coldly. "I will definitely capture him with my own hands and use his ashes to pay respects to my esteemed father and mother. When that happens, I will come and tie things up with you. Guoshi, don't you dare think about running away." As he ended his words, he gripped his longsword and struck, slashing the cauldron, and turned abruptly to walk away. Boiling water spilled from the cauldron, and liquid filled with slivers of bones poured onto the ground. Si Lian wanted to chase after him, but he knew that it wouldn't be of any use. He braked in his step and stopped, standing still, unable to speak. Hua Cheng approached him. "He just found out the truth, so it's better to let him be by himself and cool down." Si Lian was dumbfounded. Why must he know the truth? Was the truth that important? Very important, Hua Cheng replied. He needed to know what was done by you and what wasn't, and why you had to do what you did. Si Lian whipped around in a fit and said coldly, "What's the use of knowing everything so clearly? Would I be any more blameless if I killed less people? Would things be less hard?" Hua Cheng didn't respond. A burst of anger rolled up from Si Lian's chest, and he didn't even know who to be mad at. He blurted, "And what shitty hardship have I experienced? His Majesty the King Father had always wanted to integrate the two clans. Did I not kill him? Prince Enlil was the last to my family's bloodline. Did I not kill him? No matter what, it's all my fault, so if all the blame goes to me, what's wrong with that? What's there to be afraid of? Whatever comes at me, I can't die anyway. I did this. I bring misfortune. And now I've brought it to Prince Enlil, to Qirong, and to everyone in Xianlei. Is it not better to hate one instead of all? Must he think that everything I taught him was false, and nothing more than empty bullshit?" Hua Cheng watched him quietly and didn't argue. The two stared at each other, and suddenly Si Lian covered his face with his hands. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, San Lang. I've gone mad. I'm sorry. It's nothing.
It's my fault, Hua Cheng said.
No, you're not at fault. This is my problem. Si Lian slumped to the ground, holding his head. What a mess. What a disastrous mess. After a moment, Hua Cheng sat down next to him. You weren't wrong. Si Lian held his head and said nothing. Hua Cheng continued, the Yonggan king was killed to protect the remaining people of Xianlei. Prince An Le was killed to prevent the two clans from fighting. In the end, to die at the hands of Lang Qianchu, the murderer faced justice. 3 lives exchanged for centuries of peace, it's worth it. If it was me, I would've done the same. Listen to me. His voice was firm with no room for doubt. You weren't wrong. No one could have done it better than you. Si Lian was quiet. After some time he finally said, I just don't think it's right. He slowly lifted his face. I just don't think it's right for someone to have been kind, but still receive a bad end. I don't think it should have ended up this way. Even if it's fake, I wanted Qianchu to remember that his benevolence to Xianlei would be reciprocated. Doing the right thing will open endless paths. Not like now, where he thinks everything I told him, everything he believed in, were all false, lies, deception. That everything was goddamn bullshit. He raised his right hand, and said while looking at it, I don't want to see anyone go through what I've gone through. Hua Cheng listened silently. Si Lian felt self-conscious about the vulgar words he used and apologized. Again. I'm sorry. But look how incredibly silly things are in this world. The first few generations of Yonggan rule were filled with violence and cruelty, but none died tragically. When it came to Lang Qianchu's parents, all they wanted was to do some good, do something great, but it ended the way it did. The king of Yonggan honored him as the Guoshi, and treated him with the utmost respect for 5 years. Even at the end of his life, he passed on without any signs of that trust dispersing. Si Lian's eyes looked far ahead, unfocused. He whispered, I really can't forget the look on his face when my sword penetrated him. Hua Cheng said softly, forget about it. That was Qi Rong and Prince Enle's fault. Si Lian shook his head, and buried it between his knees, his voice exhausted. And everything was going just fine too. When Lang Qianchu's father first ascended the throne, his first rule was to break the culture of oppressing the people of Xianlei. The people of Xianlei and the people of Yonggan finally experienced peace among each other for the first time. There were finally winds of change, finally signs of integration, finally hope for leaving conflict behind, and Prince Enle had to pick that time to wash the gilded banquet with blood. That night when he escaped and found Prince Enle, he was originally going to warn him never to stir up trouble again. Yet after the last descendant of his royal house discovered his true identity, he excitedly grabbed hold of him, and asked him to join his grand scheme of revenge and the recovery of their kingdom. His eyes were so red with passion and his voice so high with excitement that it made one's hair stand on end. He first swore to spill blood at the gilded banquet, then annihilate Lang Qianchu, and then cause havoc in Yonggan. They would do this even at the cost of destroying the growing amity amongst the two peoples, and at the cost of all the lives that remained from Xianlei, as long as they could drag all of Yonggan, royalty and commoners alike, to the depths of hell. They would not hesitate.
But in the end, what was killed was killed, what was murdered was murdered.
However just the reason, however compelling the reason, the truth was that he killed with his own hands an honorable king who had truly wanted to eradicate discrimination, and the last blood descendant of his family in this world. So, he deserved all the blame. 39 An means safe, peace, to settle, la means happiness, joy. Shi Rong was dissecting the words on their own and drawing his own meaning from them.